The dirty water hit Ethan Cole's face like hatred made liquid. Cold, filthy, reeking of floor cleaner and mop residue. It soaked through his cheap suit, plastered his hair to his skull, dripped from his chin onto the polished ballroom floor. Victoria Chen stood above him, empty bucket still in her hands, her $3,000 dress shimmering under the chandeliers. 300 people watched in frozen silence. Then his 8-year-old daughter screamed, "Daddy!" But Ethan didn't move, didn't wipe his face. He just stared at the woman who had no idea she'd just destroyed herself. Because Victoria Chen had just humiliated the one man who actually owned everything she thought was hers. What happened next would shatter not just her career, but her entire understanding of power. Drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. Ethan Cole's alarm was set for 5:50 a.m., but his eyes opened at 5:47. 3 minutes early. Same as yesterday. Same as every morning for the past 5 years. He lay still, staring at the water stain on the ceiling. The landlord had promised to fix it 6 months ago. Ethan could have bought this entire building with pocket change. Instead, he waited for a repair that would never come. That was the game. That was the test. From the smaller bedroom came the soft sound of his daughter breathing. Emma, 8 years old, the only thing in this world that mattered. Ethan pushed himself up. His feet hit cold floor. He moved through the morning routine the way a soldier moves through familiar territory. Efficient, automatic, numb. Coffee first, cheap instant. Not the Ethiopian blend he used to drink before everything changed. He pulled out Emma's lunchbox, faded purple, unicorn sticker peeling at the corner. She'd put that sticker there herself 3 years ago, right after her mother died. Peanut butter and jelly, apple slices, string cheese. The same lunch he'd made 1,000 times. Rachel's photograph sat on the narrow counter. His wife's face was slightly faded now, the colors bleeding toward sepia. But her eyes still held that warmth, that certainty that everything would be okay. She'd been wrong about that. Aneurysm. No warning, no chance for goodbye. One moment Rachel was laughing at something Emma said, and the next she was on the floor, and Ethan was screaming her name, and the paramedics were shaking their heads. 3 years. It hurt less than it used to, but it never stopped hurting entirely. Ethan touched the frame. "Morning, sweetheart." The photograph didn't answer. It never did. "Morning, Daddy." He turned. Emma stood in the doorway, hair tangled from sleep, wearing her favorite pajamas, the ones with astronauts that were getting too small, but she refused to give up. Ethan smiled, the real smile, the one he saved only for her. "Morning, sweetheart. Ready for school?" "Do I have to go?" "You do." "Mrs. Patterson says I'm doing great in math." "That's wonderful." "Math is boring." "Math bought those astronaut pajamas." Emma giggled, and the sound filled the small apartment with something that felt almost like hope. They ate breakfast together, cereal for her, toast for him. She talked about her science project. She wanted to build Saturn with real rings. Ethan suggested cardboard and paint. She countered with foam. He agreed because foam was $3 at the craft store, and he'd learned to pick his battles. At 7:30, they walked the 6 blocks to Jefferson Elementary. Ethan carried her backpack because she insisted on holding his hand, and he would have walked 60 blocks if it meant keeping that small hand in his. Other parents passed them. Some nodded. Most were distracted. A few gave him that look, the pitying one. Ethan Cole, the single dad, the one who showed up to every school event wearing the same 3 shirts, rotated carefully to avoid obvious repetition. The one who couldn't afford the field trip to the science museum, but volunteered to chaperone anyway, taking a sick day from his warehouse job to do it. "Mr. Cole!" He turned. Principal Morrison was approaching, heels clicking on the pavement. Mid-50s, professional smile. Good heart buried under layers of administrative exhaustion. "Good morning, Principal Morrison. I wanted to remind you about tonight's charity gala." She hesitated. "We still need volunteers for the serving staff. I know it's last minute, but I'll be there. What time?" Relief flooded her face. 6 o'clock. The ballroom at the Meridian Hotel." Another hesitation. "It's going to be quite formal. The sponsor this year is Horizon Industries. Their CEO is attending." Something shifted in Ethan's chest, a cold weight settling behind his ribs. "Victoria Chen?" "Yes, she's been incredibly generous. The school is very fortunate." Ethan's expression stayed neutral. "I'll be there." "Thank you. It means so much." Principal Morrison touched Emma's head gently. "Your dad's a good man, sweetheart." Emma beamed. "I know." After dropping Emma at her classroom, Ethan walked back through the morning streets with his hands in his jacket pockets. Victoria Chen. He hadn't seen her in person for 5 years. Not since the day his father's lawyer had explained the terms of the inheritance. The conditions that had seemed insane at the time, but now made perfect sense. His phone buzzed, a text from James Hartwell, his father's oldest friend and the chairman of Horizon Industries board. "Meeting confirmed, 11 a.m. Are you certain about tonight?" Ethan typed back, "Yes." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Your father would be proud, or horrified. Possibly both." Ethan smiled grimly and pocketed his phone. The warehouse job started at 9. Ethan clocked in, nodded to the supervisor who barely looked up from his clipboard, and spent the next 2 hours moving boxes, operating the forklift, and listening to his coworkers complain about their bosses, their pay, their lives. He didn't complain, he just worked. Steady, reliable. The kind of employee who showed up on time and never caused problems. At 10:45, he told the supervisor he had a doctor's appointment. "Again?" The supervisor finally looked up. "That's the 3rd one this month." "I know. I'm sorry. Won't happen again." The supervisor waved him off. "Whatever, Cole. Just don't make it a habit." Ethan left through the back entrance, where his real car was waiting. Not the beat-up Honda he drove to work, but the black Mercedes he kept in a private garage 3 blocks away. He changed in the car. The tailored suit cost more than 2 months of his warehouse salary. It fit perfectly, because it had been made for him specifically, back when fitting perfectly was something he took for granted. The drive across the city took 20 minutes. The law offices of Hartwell and Associates occupied the top floor of a building Ethan's grandfather had built in 1962. James Hartwell was waiting in his private office. 73 years old, silver-haired, sharp as a knife even after 5 decades of corporate warfare. He didn't stand when Ethan entered, didn't offer his hand. Instead, he studied Ethan for a long moment, the way a general studies a soldier before sending him into battle. "You look like your father." "I'll take that as a compliment." It wasn't one. Your father was stubborn as hell. James gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit. We need to talk about what happens tonight." Ethan sat. "Victoria Chen is attending your daughter's school gala. You'll be there serving drinks. That's all you need to know." "That's the stupidest plan I've ever heard." "Excuse me?" "You heard me." James leaned forward, his eyes hard. "She poured coffee on a caterer last month, made the company blog, called him incompetent in front of 50 people. I saw. She's fired 3 assistants this year for bringing her the wrong lunch order, screamed at a janitor for leaving a trash can 2 feet from where she wanted it. She treats people like they're disposable, Ethan, like they're not even human." Ethan's jaw tightened. I know. My father's will states that I can only take control if Victoria proves herself unworthy of the position. Well, she's proven it. Over and over. Tonight is just the final confirmation, James finished for him. I know, but there's a difference between knowing someone is cruel and having the world see it with their own eyes. That's the point. The point? James stood abruptly, walked to the window. The point is that you're going to stand there and let that woman humiliate you, publicly, deliberately? You're going to give her the opportunity to destroy you, and you're betting everything that she'll take it. She'll take it. And if she doesn't, then I'll know I was wrong about her. James turned back. You're not wrong. I've watched her for 5 years. I've seen what she does to people when she thinks no one is watching. But Ethan, your daughter might see this. My daughter has already seen me treated like trash by half the parents at that school. Every pickup, every PTA meeting, every time someone looks through me like I'm not even there. This is different. Yes, it is. Ethan stood. Tonight, she'll see something different. She'll see her father standing up, getting knocked down, and getting back up again. She'll see her father soaking wet and humiliated. And then she'll see him refuse to break. Ethan buttoned his jacket. That's the lesson, James. Not that you should never fall, that you should always get back up. James was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. Your father designed this test because he wanted to know if Horizon Industries could be led by someone with heart. Not just ambition, not just intelligence. Heart. Victoria Chen has never shown any sign of having one. Then tonight we find out for certain. And if she passes? If she somehow shows kindness to a stranger? Ethan met his eyes. Then I'll sign over control and disappear forever. That was the deal. That was always the deal. He turned toward the door. Ethan, he stopped. The board is ready. The moment you give the signal, we convene. Legal has prepared all the documentation. Her termination will be immediate and absolute. Good. Be careful tonight. Careful? Ethan almost laughed. James, I'm about to let a woman pour dirty water on my head in front of 300 people. Careful went out the window a long time ago. He left the office, changed back into his warehouse clothes, and returned to work for the final 2 hours of his shift. At 5:30, Ethan drove home, showered, and put on the cheapest suit he owned, the one he'd bought at a thrift store specifically for moments like this. The jacket was too big in the shoulders. The tie had a small stain near the bottom. The shoes were scuffed beyond polishing. He looked exactly like what Victoria Chen would expect. A struggling single father, trying his best to look presentable for an event he couldn't afford to attend. Mrs. Chen, the babysitter, no relation to Victoria, arrived at 6. "You look handsome, Mr. Cole," she said, and meant it kindly. "Thank you, Mrs. Chen." He knelt down to kiss Emma's forehead. "Be good." "Always am." She was already pulling out her coloring books. "Have fun at the fancy party." "I'll try." The drive to the Meridian Hotel took 20 minutes. The parking garage attendant directed him to the employee section, far from the gleaming Teslas and BMWs of the actual guests. Ethan parked, walked through the service entrance, and found the catering coordinator, a harried woman with a clipboard and zero patience for questions. "You'll be serving champagne during cocktail hour," she said, without looking at him. "Stay near the west wall. Don't engage with guests unless they ask you something directly. Don't make eye contact unless necessary. Smile, but don't be intrusive." "Understood." "Good. Put on this jacket and grab a tray." The white serving jacket was slightly too tight. Ethan didn't complain. He picked up a tray of champagne glasses and walked into the ballroom. The room was already filling with Jefferson Elementary's wealthiest donors. Women in designer dresses, men in custom tuxedos. The kind of people who wrote five-figure checks without blinking and expected their names on plaques. Ethan moved along the west wall, invisible in his white jacket. Just another server in a room full of important people. He recognized several faces. Parents who'd ignored him at pickup, who'd rushed past him at PTA meetings, who'd never once asked about Emma or how she was adjusting to life without her mother. And then he saw her. Victoria Chen stood near the center of the room, surrounded by admirers. Her crimson dress probably cost what Ethan pretended to make in 6 months. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was flawless. Her smile was practiced and beautiful, and completely empty. She laughed at something a school board member said, her hand touching his arm lightly. The gesture of someone who knew exactly how to work a room. Behind her, slightly to the left, stood Derek Morrison, Principal Morrison's nephew, Victoria's assistant at Horizon Industries. He held her clutch purse and phone like a well-trained servant, whispering something in her ear. She nodded without looking at him. Ethan watched her accept praise for Horizon Industries' recent innovations. His innovations. He watched her tell the story of the renewable energy patent that would change everything. His design, submitted anonymously 6 months ago. He watched her smile modestly as people congratulated her on her vision, her genius, her leadership. His vision, his genius, his leadership. Stolen and repackaged with a different name. "Excuse me." Ethan turned. An older woman in pearls smiled at him. "Could I have a glass of champagne, please?" "Of course." He offered the tray. She took a glass, nodded her thanks, and moved away without really seeing him. That was the thing about being a server at events like this. You were furniture. Useful furniture, but furniture nonetheless. The cocktail hour stretched on. Ethan refilled his tray 3 times. His feet began to ache in the cheap shoes. He heard fragments of conversations, gossip about affairs, complaints about interior designers, arguments about which private school had the better lacrosse team. Not a single person talked about the children they were supposedly here to support. At 7:15, Principal Morrison took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, if you could please begin making your way to your tables, dinner will be served shortly." Her voice carried across the ballroom. "I'd like to take a moment to thank our generous sponsor for this evening, Horizon Industries, and their remarkable CEO, Victoria Chen." Applause erupted. Victoria stood, smiled graciously, and gave a small wave. "Victoria has shown us what true leadership looks like," Principal Morrison continued. "Under her guidance, Horizon Industries has become a beacon of innovation and social responsibility. We're so fortunate to have her support." More applause. Victoria mouthed, "Thank you," to the crowd. Ethan set down his empty tray and picked up a new one, water glasses for the dinner service. He moved between tables, filling glasses, clearing plates, staying in the background. Victoria's table was near the front. She sat between the superintendent of schools and a city councilman, both hanging on her every word. "The key to innovation," she was saying, "is creating an environment where brilliant minds can thrive. At Horizon, we've fostered a culture of creativity and bold thinking." The councilman nodded enthusiastically. "That renewable energy patent, that's going to put us on the map nationally." "We're very proud of that work," Victoria said. "It represents months of dedicated research." Ethan's jaw tightened. 8 months. 8 months of late nights after Emma went to bed. 8 months of calculations and simulations on his laptop at the kitchen table. 8 months of solving problems that Victoria Chen wouldn't have understood if he'd explained them in crayon. The dinner service continued. Main course, dessert, coffee. Ethan moved through it mechanically, his mind elsewhere. Around 8:30, he made his move. He picked up a tray of water glasses and walked toward Victoria's table. Deliberate, purposeful, timed perfectly. The moment when she'd just finished speaking and was taking a sip of wine. The moment when she'd be most annoyed by an interruption. Water? She didn't look up. No. He stayed there, tray extended, waiting. Victoria's head snapped toward him. Irritation flashed in her eyes. I said no. Are you deaf? My apologies, ma'am. Just making sure everyone has what they need. She looked at him then, really looked. And something like recognition flickered across her face. Not recognition of who he really was, but recognition of a type. The struggling parent. The one who didn't belong. You're one of the parents, aren't you? Yes, ma'am. My daughter attends Jefferson Elementary. Victoria's lip curled slightly. How quaint. She exchanged glances with Derek, who smirked. Tell me, do you always work as catering staff at your child's school events? Or is this a special occasion? The nearby tables had gone quiet. People were turning to watch. I volunteer when I can, Ethan said evenly. It's important to support the school. Support. Victoria repeated the word like it tasted bad. Is that what you call it? I call it desperation. Let me guess. You couldn't afford the ticket price, so you put on a jacket and pretended to belong here. Ethan said nothing. She stood. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. The entire ballroom seemed to tilt toward them. Conversations dying, heads turning, phones quietly emerging from pockets. This is exactly what's wrong with public schools, Victoria announced, her voice carrying. They let just anyone participate. No standards, no dignity. She plucked a water glass from his tray with 2 fingers, as if touching something contaminated. Look at this suit. Look at those shoes. You think you belong in a room with people who've actually accomplished something? Victoria, Principal Morrison said softly, standing. Perhaps we should... No, Victoria cut her off. This is important. This man needs to understand something. She turned back to Ethan. Success isn't an accident. It's not luck. It's discipline and intelligence and knowing your place in the world. Your place, she gestured at him dismissively, is clearly not here. Ethan met her eyes. Where is my place? Serving drinks, apparently. Be grateful you're even allowed in the building. Someone in the crowd gasped. Derek laughed outright. You know what your problem is? Victoria continued, warming to her theme. People like you think you're entitled to respect, just for showing up. You think putting on a cheap suit and playing volunteer makes you equal to people who've actually built something. She paused, letting her words land. But respect is earned. And you, she looked him up and down with open disdain, haven't earned anything. Ethan's hands tightened on the tray, but his voice stayed calm. You're right about one thing. Respect is earned. Finally, some self-awareness. Victoria smirked at her table mates. Maybe there's hope for him after all. That's when Ethan saw the janitor's cart. It sat near the service entrance, probably forgotten by one of the hotel staff during the dinner rush. And on top of that cart, almost like it had been placed there specifically for this moment, was a yellow bucket filled with dirty mop water. Murky, gray, reeking of industrial floor cleaner. Victoria saw him looking, saw the bucket, and something cruel and gleeful sparked in her eyes. Derek, she said quietly, get that bucket. Victoria, come on. Derek was grinning, but there was hesitation in his voice. "That's a bit much, even for you." "Get the bucket." The ballroom went absolutely silent. 300 people held their collective breath. Derek walked to the cart, picked up the bucket, carried it to Victoria like an offering. She took it, held it, looked at Ethan with an expression that would haunt him later. Not anger, not even disgust, but something worse. Satisfaction. The pure satisfaction of someone who believed they were delivering a necessary lesson. "This," Victoria said, "is where you belong." She lifted the bucket. Time seemed to slow. Ethan saw Principal Morrison's hand reaching out. Too late. Saw Derek's grin widening. Saw the other guests watching with horrified fascination. Saw the phones recording. Saw the moment crystallizing into something that could never be taken back. And he made a choice. He didn't move, didn't step back, didn't protect himself. He just looked at Victoria Chen and thought, "Show them who you are." The dirty water hit him with shocking force. Cold, filthy. It soaked through his jacket, his shirt, plastered his hair to his head. It ran down his face, dripped from his nose and chin, pooled at his feet. The bucket clattered to the floor. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then came the scream. "Daddy!" Emma, running toward him from the doorway. Mrs. Chen stood frozen behind her, hand over her mouth. The babysitter must have brought her to see him at the fancy party, thinking it would be a treat. Instead, she'd seen her father destroyed. Ethan knelt down, soaking wet, and caught his daughter as she crashed into him, sobbing into his ruined jacket. "It's okay, sweetheart," he whispered, his voice cracking. "It's okay. Daddy's okay." But his hands were shaking as he held her. His entire body was shaking. Not from cold, from rage so absolute it felt like a physical thing pressing against his ribs. He looked up at Victoria over Emma's head. She was staring at them both. The triumph in her expression was beginning to crack as she registered the child. The tears. The 300 phones recording every second. Victoria started. Ethan stood, lifting Emma with him. He walked past Victoria without another word. His shoes squelched against the polished floor. Dirty water dripped behind him like a trail of evidence. The crowd parted. No one spoke. No one stopped him. He carried his daughter out through the main entrance, not the service door. Let them see. Let them all see. In the parking garage, Ethan set Emma down gently. Her face was blotchy with tears, her small hands twisted together. "Daddy, why did that lady—" "Later," he said, his voice harder than he meant it to be. "I'll explain later." "Please, just get in the car." She climbed in, still crying. Mrs. Chen hurried after them, apologizing in a rush of words he barely heard. "Thank you for bringing her," Ethan said. "I'll pay you for the extra time." "Mr. Cole, I'm so sorry. I thought—" "It's fine. Please, just go home." She left. Ethan climbed into the driver's seat. His hands gripped the steering wheel hard enough to make his knuckles white. His phone buzzed. James Hartwell. "I saw. Everyone saw. The board is convening now. Say the word." Ethan looked at Emma. Her face was pressed against the window, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "Daddy," she said in a tiny voice, "are you going to be okay?" He reached over and squeezed her hand. "Yes," he said. "I promise you. Everything is going to be okay." Then he picked up his phone and typed one word back to James. "Now." The drive home took 17 minutes, but it felt like hours. Ethan kept one hand on the wheel and the other holding Emma's, feeling her small fingers grip his tight, like she was afraid he might disappear. She'd stopped crying, but her breathing still hitched every few seconds, those aftermath shudders that break a parent's heart worse than the actual tears. "I ruined your evening," Ethan said quietly.
"No."
Emma's voice was fierce despite its smallness.
"That mean lady ruined it."
"Sometimes people do mean things, sweetheart."
"Why?"
It was the eternal question, the one he'd been asking himself for 5 years. Why had his father designed this test? Why had Victoria become what she was? Why had Rachel died and left them both alone? Why did the world work the way it did? "I don't know," he said honestly, "but we're going to find out." When they pulled up to the apartment building, Ethan's phone was vibrating constantly in his pocket. He ignored it. First, Emma. Everything else could wait. Mrs. Chen had already left. The apartment was dark except for the kitchen light they always kept on. Emma went straight to the couch, pulling her favorite blanket around herself like armor. "I'm going to change," Ethan said. "You want hot chocolate?" She nodded without looking at him. In the bathroom, Ethan finally saw himself in the mirror. His hair was plastered to his skull. His shirt clung to him, stained gray and brown. He could smell the mop water, chemical and foul. He looked exactly like what Victoria Chen thought he was. Someone small, someone defeated, someone who didn't matter. He stripped off the ruined suit and stood under the shower until the water ran clear and hot, washing away the physical evidence, but not the memory. His hands still shook. His jaw still ached from clenching. 5 years of watching. 5 years of waiting. 5 years of being invisible. And it had all led to this moment. His daughter watching him get destroyed. That hadn't been part of the plan. When he emerged in clean clothes, Emma was exactly where he'd left her, wrapped in her blanket, staring at nothing. Ethan made 2 mugs of hot chocolate, extra marshmallows in hers, and sat beside her on the couch. "Here." She took the mug, but didn't drink.
"Daddy, why did she do that to you?"
"Because she doesn't know me." Ethan chose his words carefully. She looked at me and saw someone she thought was less than her. Someone who didn't deserve respect.
"But that's not true."
"No, it's not."
"Then why didn't you tell her?"
Ethan set down his mug and pulled Emma close. "Sometimes, sweetheart, the most important thing isn't proving people wrong. It's letting them show who they really are."
"I don't understand."
"You will soon." He kissed the top of her head. "I promise you'll understand everything soon. But right now, I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" She nodded against his chest. They sat together until her breathing evened out and her grip loosened. Ethan carried her to bed, tucked her in, and stood in her doorway for a long moment, watching her sleep. Rachel's photograph sat on Emma's nightstand. Ethan found himself looking at his late wife's face. "I hope I'm doing the right thing," he whispered. Back in the living room, Ethan finally looked at his phone. 43 messages, 27 missed calls. He scrolled through them quickly. James Hartwell had sent a series of texts. "Board is convening at 10 p.m. All members confirmed. Legal team standing by." "Ethan, half the internet has already seen what happened. This is bigger than we anticipated." Ethan opened his social media apps. The video was everywhere. Someone had posted it from the gala, and it had already been shared thousands of times. The comments section was a war zone. "Who does she think she is? This is assault. Someone needs to press charges. That poor man and his daughter saw everything. Horizon Industries should be ashamed. Victoria Chen is a monster." But there were other comments too.
The ones that made Ethan's stomach turn. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Why was he even there? We don't know the full story. Rich people gonna rich. What did he expect? Ethan closed the apps and opened his laptop. He logged into the secure server that only 13 people in the world had access to. The board members of Horizon Industries and himself. A video conference was already in progress. James Hartwell's face filled the main screen, with the other board members in smaller windows arranged around him. Ethan, James's expression was grim. We've been waiting. I'm here. We've reviewed the footage. We've consulted with legal. The unanimous decision is to proceed with immediate termination of Victoria Chen's employment, effective tonight. James paused. But we need to discuss the optics of this. Optics? Catherine Williams, the CFO, and another of his father's old friends, leaned into her camera.
Ethan, that video shows a powerful CEO humiliating a working-class father in front of his child. When we terminate her and reveal that you're actually the owner of Horizon Industries, it's going to look like revenge, like you manufactured the situation. I didn't manufacture anything. I gave her the opportunity to be who she is. She took it. We know that, Robert Chen, no relation to Victoria, said from his window. But the court of public opinion won't see it that way. They'll see a billionaire playing games with people's lives. Then what do you suggest? We let her keep running the company? Pretend this didn't happen? No, James's voice was firm. We terminate her. We reveal your identity. But we do it right. We do it in a way that shows this isn't about revenge. It's about character. How? We call an emergency shareholder meeting for tomorrow morning. We present the evidence. Not just tonight, but everything. The innovations she stole credit for. The employees she's mistreated. The culture of cruelty she's fostered. We show that tonight was the final straw, not the only straw. Ethan was quiet for a moment. And Victoria? She's being notified right now. Security is at her home as we speak. She's being informed that she's been placed on immediate administrative leave, pending a board investigation. She'll be asked to surrender her company credentials and property tonight. She'll fight this. Let her. Catherine's voice was hard. She has no legal ground to stand on. Your father's will is ironclad. The succession clause is clear. If at any point during the 5-year observation period, the heir determines that the acting CEO is unfit, control reverts immediately to the heir. You've determined she's unfit. It's done. Ethan rubbed his eyes. What time is the shareholder meeting? 9 a.m. We're holding it at headquarters. The major shareholders have already been contacted. This will be public by lunch. Good. Ethan, James's voice softened. Your father designed this test because he wanted to know if Horizon could be led by someone with heart and vision, not just ambition. Victoria failed that test. But now you have to prove you can pass it. I will. I hope so, because tomorrow the whole world is going to be watching. The call ended. Ethan closed the laptop and sat in the dark living room, listening to the city sounds filter through the windows. Somewhere out there, Victoria Chen was getting the shock of her life. Somewhere out there, Derek Morrison was probably panicking. Somewhere out there, the wheels were already turning. His phone buzzed again, a number he didn't recognize. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. Hello? Mr. Cole? Or should I say, Mr. Reed? The voice was female, young, eager. Who is this? Jennifer Walsh, Metro Times. I'm covering the incident at the Jefferson Elementary Gala tonight. I was hoping you'd give me a statement. How did you get this number? Sources. She said it like it was obvious. Mr. Reed,
Is it true that you're the actual owner of Horizon Industries? That Victoria Chen has been operating under your authority this entire time? Ethan's hand tightened on the phone. No comment. But you are Ethan Reed, aren't you? Son of William Reed? Grandson of Harold Reed, the founder of Horizon Industries? I said no comment. The public has a right to know. He hung up. The phone immediately rang again. Different number. He declined it. Another call came through. He turned the phone off entirely. This was happening faster than he'd anticipated. The video had gone viral. Someone had connected the dots. By morning, every media outlet in the city would be camped outside his apartment building. Ethan walked to the window. 13 floors below, the street looked normal. Cars passing, late-night pedestrians. No camera crews yet. But they'd come. He thought about Emma sleeping in the next room. Thought about the questions she'd ask tomorrow. Thought about how her life was about to change in ways she couldn't possibly understand. His phone, still off, sat on the coffee table like an unexploded bomb. Ethan picked it up and turned it back on. Immediately, 20 new messages downloaded. He ignored them all except one. James Hartwell. Media knows. We're accelerating timeline. Meeting moved to 7 a.m. Get some sleep if you can. Sleep. Right. Ethan walked back to Emma's room and checked on her one more time. She'd kicked off her blanket. He pulled it back up, tucking it gently around her shoulders. I'm sorry, he whispered, but this is important. You'll understand why, I promise. He kissed her forehead and walked back out, leaving the door cracked open the way she liked it. In the kitchen, Ethan made coffee, even though it was past midnight. He sat at the small table where he'd spent countless nights working on designs that Victoria would later claim as her own, and he opened his laptop again. The Horizon Industries internal server had a folder he hadn't accessed in months. He clicked it open. Inside were dozens of files, meticulously organized, dated, documented. Every innovation he'd submitted anonymously. Every email where Victoria had presented his work as hers. Every performance review where she'd taken credit. Every patent filing where his ideas became her achievements. 5 years of evidence. 5 years of theft. 5 years of watching someone else wear his crown. Ethan had thought it would make him angry looking at these files. Instead, he felt calm, cold, clear. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, Victoria Chen would lose everything she'd spent 5 years building on stolen ground. Tomorrow, the world would know the truth. But tonight, Ethan was still just a single father in a small apartment, drinking cheap coffee, wearing old sweatpants, looking at photographs of his late wife and hoping he was doing right by her memory. I miss you, he said to Rachel's picture on the counter. I wish you were here. You'd know exactly what to say to Emma tomorrow. The photograph didn't answer. It never did. But somehow, sitting there in the quiet kitchen, with the city breathing outside his window, Ethan felt like Rachel was with him anyway. Like she'd been with him through all of this. Like she'd be with him tomorrow, when everything exploded. He finished his coffee and went to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. He lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, mentally rehearsing what he'd say at the shareholder meeting. The words needed to be right, not vengeful, not bitter, just honest. At 3 a.m., he gave up on sleep and went back to the living room. The local news was running the story. Shocking incident at a charity gala tonight has sparked outrage on social media. Victoria Chen, CEO of Horizon Industries, was caught on video dumping dirty mop water on a parent volunteer. The video, which has been viewed over 2 million times, shows Ethan turned it off.
He didn't need to watch. He'd lived it. His phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Against his better judgment, he answered. Ethan Reed. This voice was male, older, authoritative. Who's asking? David Patterson. I'm the investigative reporter who broke the Henderson corruption case last year. I've been looking into Horizon Industries for 6 months. The ownership structure, the mysterious innovations, the way Victoria Chen seemed to produce breakthrough after breakthrough with no clear research trail. Ethan said nothing. And tonight, I watched a video that made everything click into place. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. You've been submitting the innovations anonymously, haven't you? Through encrypted channels, watching her take credit, building a case. Mr. Patterson, I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to help you. When this story breaks tomorrow, and it will break, with or without your cooperation, you're going to need someone who understands the full picture. Someone who can frame this as a story about corporate ethics, not personal revenge. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. What do you want? An exclusive. After the shareholder meeting, before anyone else. You tell me your side, unfiltered, and I'll make sure the world understands what really happened here. Why should I trust you? Because right now, you're about to become the most talked about person in business news. Every outlet is going to want a piece of you. Most of them will get it wrong. They'll make you the villain or the hero, and neither one will be accurate. I'll make you a human being, which is what you are. Ethan closed his eyes. If I agree to this, when you agree to this, Patterson corrected. When I agree to this, you need to understand something. My daughter is 8 years old. She's been through enough. If your story brings cameras to her school or harassment to her life, we're done. Are we clear? Crystal clear. I have kids too. I know the line. Call me after the shareholder meeting. We'll talk. Ethan hung up before Patterson could respond. The sky outside was starting to lighten. That pre-dawn gray that promised morning, whether you were ready for it or not. Ethan made more coffee, showered again, and put on one of his better suits. Still not expensive, but clean and pressed. At 5:30, he heard Emma stirring. She appeared in the living room wearing her astronaut pajamas, hair tangled, eyes puffy. "You're awake," she said. "Couldn't sleep." "Me neither." She climbed onto the couch next to him. "Are we going to school today?" "Not today, sweetheart." "Why not?" Ethan pulled her close. "Because today is going to be different. Today, some things are going to change. Big things." "What kind of things?" "The kind where people find out the truth about who we are." Emma looked up at him. "Who are we?" "We're the same people we've always been. We're just going to stop pretending to be less than that." She was quiet for a moment. "Is this because of the mean lady?" "Yes." "Good." Her voice was fierce again. She should know she was mean to someone important. Ethan smiled despite everything. "When did you get so wise?" "I'm 8. That's pretty old." "It is very old." They sat together as the morning light strengthened. Ethan made breakfast, pancakes, Emma's favorite, and they ate in comfortable silence. At 6:15, his phone rang. James Hartwell. "I'm on my way to headquarters," James said. "Are you ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be." "The press is already gathering outside. Security is setting up barricades." "This is going to be a circus, Ethan." "I know." "And Victoria?" "What about her?" "She's refusing to believe this is happening. Her lawyers are threatening legal action. She's demanding to speak to the board." "Let her demand." "She's also claiming that you orchestrated the entire incident last night, that you provoked her deliberately."
Ethan laughed without humor. I stood there and offered water. She chose to humiliate me. That's not provocation. That's revelation. Legal agrees. We're on solid ground. But be prepared for her to fight dirty. She's been fighting dirty for 5 years. I'm prepared. After the call ended, Ethan looked at Emma. I have to go to a meeting, a very important meeting. Mrs. Chen is going to come stay with you. Can't I come with you? Not to this one, sweetheart. But I promise, when I come home, everything will be different. Better. Okay. Mrs. Chen arrived at 6:30, her face full of concern and unasked questions. Ethan thanked her, kissed Emma goodbye, and walked out to face the day that would redefine everything. The black Mercedes was waiting in the private garage. Ethan climbed in, adjusted the rearview mirror, and caught his own eyes in the reflection. He looked tired, older than 35. But there was something else there, too. Certainty. Purpose. The drive to Horizon Industries headquarters took 40 minutes. As he approached the gleaming glass tower that his grandfather had built and his father had expanded, Ethan saw the crowd. News vans, cameras, reporters with microphones, security guards forming a human barrier at the entrance. He drove past them to the underground executive parking garage. His keycard, the one he'd kept active all these years under a shell company name, opened the gate. He descended into the quiet concrete beneath the building, parked in the spot marked CEO, and sat for a moment in the silence. This was it. The moment 5 years had built toward. The moment his father had designed. The moment Victoria Chen had earned. Ethan got out of the car, straightened his tie, and walked to the private elevator that went directly to the top floor. The elevator that only the CEO used. He pressed his thumb to the biometric scanner. The system hesitated for just a moment, checking, verifying, confirming, and then the doors opened. Ethan stepped inside, pressed the button for the executive floor, and felt the elevator begin to rise, carrying him up from the underground into the light. When the doors opened again, he was standing in the executive reception area. The walls were decorated with portraits of the company's leadership over the decades. His grandfather, his father, and there, in the place of honor, a portrait of Victoria Chen. Not for much longer. Mr. Reed. He turned. James Hartwell stood there, flanked by the other board members. 12 people who'd kept his secret for 5 years. 12 people who'd watched Victoria Chen from the inside, while Ethan watched from the outside. 12 people who'd waited for this moment as long as he had. The shareholders are gathered in the main conference room, James said. Are you ready? Ethan looked at the portrait of Victoria Chen one more time. Remembered her face as she lifted that bucket. Remembered Emma's scream. Remembered 5 years of stolen credit and casual cruelty. Yes, he said. I'm ready. They walked together down the hallway toward the conference room. Ethan could hear voices inside, dozens of people, the major shareholders who own pieces of Horizon Industries and deserve to know the truth. James opened the door. The conversation stopped instantly. Every head turned, every eye locked on Ethan. He walked to the front of the room, to the podium where Victoria Chen had stood so many times to present his innovations as her own. He looked out at the faces staring back at him, curious, confused, waiting. Ethan cleared his throat and began to speak. My name is Ethan Reed, and it's time you knew the truth about who's really been running this company. The silence in the conference room pressed against Ethan like physical weight. 43 shareholders sat frozen in their chairs, some with coffee cups halfway to their lips, others with pens hovering over notepads. James Hartwell stood to his right, hands gripping the edge of the table. Catherine Williams had her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Ethan gripped the podium, feeling the smooth wood beneath his palms. 5 years ago, my father, William Reed, passed away. Most of you knew him. Some of you worked with him for decades. He built this company from the foundation my grandfather laid, and he cared about it more than almost anything in his life. A few heads nodded. Ethan recognized several faces from his childhood. People who'd attended Christmas parties at the family estate, who'd shaken his hand at his father's funeral, who'd had no idea what happened to him afterward. In his will, my father included a clause that surprised everyone, including me. He stipulated that I would inherit controlling ownership of Horizon Industries, but only after a 5-year observation period. During that time, I was required to step back, change my identity, and watch from a distance while an acting CEO ran the company. He paused, letting the words settle. If, at the end of 5 years, that CEO proved worthy, I would sign over permanent control. If they didn't, I would assume my rightful position. A woman in the third row raised her hand. Margaret Thornton, who owned 7% of the company through her family trust. Why would your father design such an unusual arrangement? Ethan met her eyes. Because my father believed that true leadership reveals itself not in how people treat their equals, but in how they treat those they perceive as beneath them. He wanted to know if Horizon Industries could be led by someone with both vision and character. He wanted to test whether power would corrupt or clarify. And Victoria Chen was the test subject? Robert Martinez asked from the front row. She was the acting CEO, yes, but she wasn't the subject. The company was. The culture was. The question wasn't whether Victoria could run Horizon Industries successfully. The question was whether she would run it with integrity. James stepped forward. For the past 5 years, Ethan has been submitting innovations through encrypted channels, breakthrough designs, revolutionary patents, solutions to problems that had stumped our research teams for years. Every single one of those submissions came from him, and every single one was presented to the public as Victoria Chen's achievement. A murmur rippled through the room. Ethan watched the realization dawn on their faces, watched them recalculate everything they thought they knew about Horizon Industries' recent success. Catherine picked up a thick folder from the table. We've compiled documentation. 5 years of anonymously submitted designs matched with public patent filings. The renewable energy system that won the National Innovation Award last year? Ethan Reed's work. The water purification breakthrough that's currently being implemented in 12 countries? Ethan Reed's work. The automation protocol that increased our manufacturing efficiency by 40%? Ethan Reed's work. She dropped the folder on the table with a heavy thud. Victoria Chen has been taking credit for innovations she didn't create, presenting them at conferences, accepting awards, building her reputation on stolen intellectual property. And she did it because she believed the real creator was nobody important, just another anonymous employee she'd never have to face. But you weren't just another employee, Margaret Thornton said, looking at Ethan with new understanding. You were the owner, watching, documenting, building a case. I was a father, Ethan corrected quietly, trying to provide for my daughter while honoring my father's final wishes. The documentation was necessary, but it wasn't the point. The point was to see what kind of leader Victoria Chen really was when she thought no one was looking. And last night, James said heavily, we all got to see exactly that. He pressed a button on the remote in his hand. The large screen behind Ethan flickered to life, showing the video that had already been viewed millions of times. The ballroom. The gala. Ethan in his cheap suit, offering water. Victoria's cruel smile, her voice rising, sharp and cutting, as she explained to everyone within earshot that Ethan didn't belong, that he was nothing, that respect had to be earned. And then the bucket, the dirty water, the splash that echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot, Emma's scream cutting through the shocked silence. The video ended. No one in the conference room spoke. Ethan turned to face them, his voice steady despite the emotion pressing against his throat. Last night, my 8-year-old daughter watched a woman pour dirty mop water on her father's head. She watched 300 people stand there and do nothing. She watched me walk out of that ballroom soaking wet, humiliated, destroyed in front of her eyes. He paused, letting the words settle. My daughter didn't know who I really was. She just knew her dad was being hurt, and she couldn't understand why. Margaret Thornton had tears in her eyes. Several other shareholders looked down at their hands, unable to meet Ethan's gaze. Victoria Chen failed the test, Ethan continued. Not because she took credit for my work, though that alone would have been enough. Not because she's demanding and difficult, though her employee turnover rate speaks for itself. She failed because when presented with someone she perceived as powerless, someone she believed could be treated as disposable, she chose cruelty. She chose humiliation. She chose to break another human being for sport. The will stipulates, James said, that if at any point during the 5-year period the heir determines the acting CEO to be unfit for leadership, control reverts immediately to the heir. Ethan made that determination last night. The board has reviewed the evidence and voted unanimously to support his decision. As of 6 a.m. this morning, Victoria Chen's employment with Horizon Industries has been terminated. Her access has been revoked. Her position has been eliminated. The murmur grew louder. Some shareholders looked relieved, others looked stunned. A few looked angry. This is going to be a legal nightmare, someone said from the back row. She's not going to accept this quietly. Let her fight, Catherine said sharply. We have 5 years of documentation. We have ironclad legal standing. And we have video evidence of conduct so egregious that no court in the country would side with her. What about the media? Asked another voice. They're going to tear this apart. They're going to say Ethan set her up, that he engineered the whole thing. Ethan had been waiting for this question. I gave her an opportunity to reveal her character. That's all. I didn't put words in her mouth. I didn't force her to pick up that bucket. I stood there, offered water politely, and let her choose how to respond. She chose poorly. That's not entrapment. That's truth. The incident has already gone viral, James added. Public opinion is overwhelmingly against Victoria. People are calling for her to be criminally charged with assault. They're demanding investigations into her management practices. Horizon Industries can either get ahead of this story or get buried by it. We're choosing to get ahead. Robert Martinez leaned forward. What happens now? You take over as CEO? Just like that? Not just like that, Ethan said. I take over as the owner and rightful leader of this company, yes. But I'm not doing it for revenge. I'm doing it because Horizon Industries deserves better. Our employees deserve better. And my daughter deserves to grow up knowing that her father stood up for what was right, even when it was hard. Pretty speech, said a man Ethan didn't recognize, his tone skeptical. But you've been living in a 1-bedroom apartment for 5 years, working warehouse jobs, pretending to be someone you're not. How do we know you're actually capable of running a billion-dollar corporation? Maybe your father was right to test Victoria. Maybe he should have tested you, too. The room went completely silent. Even James looked startled by the bluntness of the challenge. Ethan didn't flinch. You want to know if I'm capable? Look at the innovations I've submitted. Look at the patents that have generated hundreds of millions in revenue. Look at the solutions I created while working night shifts and raising a daughter alone. I didn't have a research team. I didn't have unlimited resources. I had a laptop, a kitchen table, and determination, and I still outperformed everyone in this building. He let that sink in before continuing. But you're right about one thing. Leadership isn't just about intelligence or innovation. It's about character. It's about treating people with dignity even when you don't have to. It's about building a culture where cruelty isn't tolerated and kindness isn't weakness. My father tested Victoria Chen, and now I'm asking you to take a chance on me. Not because of my last name, not because of what I'm owed, but because I've already proven what I can do with nothing. Imagine what I can do with everything. Margaret Thornton started clapping. Slowly at first, then joined by others. Within seconds, more than half the room was applauding. The skeptical man in the back didn't join in, but he nodded once, a gesture of reluctant respect. James stepped forward again. We're calling a press conference for 10 a.m. Ethan will make a public statement, answer questions, and formally assume leadership of Horizon Industries. In the meantime, HR is conducting a full review of Victoria Chen's management practices. Anyone who worked directly with her will be interviewed. Anyone who witnessed misconduct will be protected. We're going to clean house. What about Derek Morrison? Someone asked. Victoria's assistant. He was there last night. He handed her the bucket. Catherine's expression hardened. Derek Morrison's employment was terminated at 6:30 this morning. He's been escorted from the building and added to the company's permanent blacklist. He will never work in this industry again. The shareholders asked more questions. Logistics about the transition, concerns about stock prices, worries about public perception. James and Catherine fielded most of them, giving Ethan time to breathe, to center himself, to prepare for what came next. At 8:15, James called an end to the meeting. We reconvene at 9:45 in the press room. Ethan, you should prepare your statement. The shareholders filed out, some stopping to shake Ethan's hand, others avoiding eye contact. When the room finally emptied, only the board members remained. Catherine walked over to Ethan, her expression softer than he'd ever seen it. Your father would be proud of you. Would he? Ethan's voice cracked slightly. I let my daughter see me humiliated. I put her through that.
What kind of father does that?
The kind who teaches her that standing up for what's right sometimes means taking a hit first, Catherine said firmly. The kind who shows her that dignity isn't about never falling down. It's about how you get back up. James squeezed Ethan's shoulder. You have an hour before the press conference. I suggest you use it to call your daughter. She needs to hear your voice before she hears it on television. Ethan nodded. He left the conference room and walked down the hallway to what had been Victoria Chen's office. The door was already unlocked. Victoria's personal items had already been cleared out by security. Her degrees from Harvard and Stanford were gone from the walls. Her expensive desk accessories were gone. Her nameplate was gone. The office was empty, except for the furniture and the ghosts of 5 years' worth of stolen credit. Ethan walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. 13 floors below, the same height as his apartment, he realized with grim irony. The press was gathering. Camera crews setting up, reporters checking their notes. He pulled out his phone and called home. Mrs. Chen answered on the second ring. Mr. Cole, Mr. Reed, I'm so sorry, I don't know what to call you. Ethan is fine. Is Emma awake? Yes, she's eating breakfast. Should I? Please. There was rustling, footsteps, then Emma's small voice. Daddy? Ethan closed his eyes. Hi, sweetheart. Where are you? I'm at my office. My real office. The place where the mean lady worked.
Does she still work there?
No, she doesn't work here anymore. Nobody's going to be mean here anymore. I'm going to make sure of it. Emma was quiet for a moment, processing.
Mrs. Chen says people are talking about you on TV. She says you're famous now.
Not famous, exactly, just visible.
What does that mean?
It means people are going to know who we really are now.
They're going to know that your dad isn't just someone who works in a warehouse. They're going to know that we have money, that we own things, that we're important in ways we couldn't tell anyone before. Will kids at school be different to me? The question hit Ethan like a punch. He hadn't thought about that, hadn't considered how Emma's entire social world was about to shift. Maybe, he admitted. Some kids might treat you differently. Some might be nicer. Some might be jealous or weird. But the kids who really matter, the ones who were your friends before, they'll still be your friends. The real ones don't change.
Like Sophie?
Exactly like Sophie.
Okay.
She sounded unconvinced, but willing to trust him.
When are you coming home?
Later today. I have to do something first. Something important. But I promise, when I come home, we're going to talk about everything. About who we are. About who your grandfather was. About why I've been keeping secrets.
I'm not mad at you, Daddy. Ethan felt his throat tighten. You should be. I made you watch something terrible last night.
But you said it was important. You said people needed to see who they really are. Was the mean lady who she really is?
Yes.
Then you were right, even if it was scary.
She paused.
Are you okay, though? You sounded sad.
I'm okay, sweetheart, I promise. I love you.
Love you too. Don't forget to eat lunch.
I won't. He hung up and stood there for a moment, looking out at the city that was about to know his name, his story, his truth. Somewhere out there, Victoria Chen was probably in her lawyer's office, planning her counterattack. Somewhere out there, Derek Morrison was realizing his career was over. Somewhere out there, the world was forming opinions about a situation they'd never fully understand. A knock on the door. James entered without waiting for an answer. It's time.
Communications team has prepared talking points, but honestly, I think you should speak from the heart. People respond to authenticity.
What if my authentic response is that I want to punch Victoria Chen in the face? James smiled grimly. Then we keep that part authentic, but unexpressed. They walked together to the press room. The space was packed with reporters, cameras, lights, microphones. Ethan counted at least 20 different news outlets represented. The major networks, financial publications, tech blogs, even some international press. A podium stood at the front of the room, the Horizon Industries logo displayed on a screen behind it. Ethan's heart pounded as he approached it, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes on him, cameras recording every micro-expression, every nervous gesture. He reached the podium, adjusted the microphone, and looked out at the assembled press. Good morning. My name is Ethan Reed, and I'm the owner of Horizon Industries.
Cameras flashed like lightning. Hands shot up immediately. Reporters shouting questions over each other. Ethan raised his hand for silence. Surprisingly, they quieted. I'll answer your questions, but first, I need to make a statement. Last night, an incident occurred at a charity gala that has understandably generated significant public attention. You've all seen the video. You know what happened. What you don't know is the context, and you deserve to understand the full story. He took a breath, steadying himself. 5 years ago, my father, William Reed, passed away and left me controlling ownership of Horizon Industries. But his will contained an unusual condition. For 5 years, I was required to step back, assume a different identity, and observe the company from a distance, while an acting CEO ran operations. That CEO was Victoria Chen.
He paused.
During those 5 years, I submitted innovations anonymously, watched the company grow, and evaluated whether Victoria Chen possessed the character necessary to lead this organization permanently. A reporter from the front row couldn't contain himself. "You're saying you've been living in poverty on purpose, while Victoria Chen took credit for your work?" "I wasn't living in poverty. I was living modestly. There's a difference. And yes, I allowed Victoria to present my innovations as her own, because I needed to see who she truly was. Success reveals people's strengths, but how they treat those they perceive as powerless reveals their character." "And last night?" Another reporter, female, her voice sharp. "Did you deliberately provoke her?" "I offered her water politely. She responded by pouring a bucket of dirty mop water on my head in front of 300 people, including my 8-year-old daughter. I didn't provoke that response. I simply gave her an opportunity to show who she is. She took it." "Some people are saying you engineered this situation," another reporter called out, "that you manipulated events to justify taking control of the company." Ethan met the reporter's eyes steadily. "I gave Victoria Chen 5 years to prove herself. 5 years to build a reputation on genuine merit. Instead, she built it on stolen innovations and a culture of cruelty. She fired employees for minor mistakes. She berated assistants publicly. She treated service workers like they were invisible. Last night wasn't an aberration. It was confirmation." "Is Victoria Chen going to face criminal charges?" someone shouted. "That's not my decision. But Horizon Industries will fully cooperate with any investigation into her conduct, both at last night's event and during her tenure as acting CEO. "What about Derek Morrison, her assistant?" "Derek Morrison's employment has been terminated. He enabled and participated in conduct that violated our company values. He's no longer welcome here." Margaret Thornton, who'd slipped into the back of the room, raised her hand. Ethan nodded at her. "What happens to Horizon Industries now? How do we know you're capable of leading this company when you've been absent for 5 years?" It was a plant question, Ethan realized. Something to let him showcase his vision without seeming defensive. "I haven't been absent. I've been present in every meaningful way. Every innovation that's made this company successful in the past 5 years came from my mind. I've watched our operations from every angle, not just the executive suite, but the warehouse floor, the service entrance, the places where real work happens. I know this company better than anyone because I've seen it from the bottom up, not just the top down." He paused, letting his voice strengthen. "But more than that, I've learned what kind of leader I want to be. I've learned that power without compassion is tyranny, that success without integrity is fraud, that leadership isn't about demanding respect, it's about earning it every single day, through how you treat the people who can't do anything for you. Victoria Chen failed that test. I don't intend to." The room erupted with more questions, dozens of voices competing. But James stepped forward and took the microphone. "That's all for now. Mr. Reed has work to do. We'll release a detailed statement this afternoon with information about the leadership transition and our plans moving forward. Thank you." Security moved in, creating a path for Ethan to exit. As he walked through the crowd of reporters still shouting questions, one voice cut through the rest. "Mr. Reed, what would you say to your daughter right now?" Ethan stopped, turned, looked directly at the camera that had asked the question. "I'd tell her that sometimes doing the right thing means taking hits you don't deserve. That standing up for what's right isn't always easy, or pretty, or comfortable. But it's always worth it." His voice caught slightly. "And I'd tell her that her father loves her more than anything in this world. More than this company. More than any amount of money or power. That she's the reason I fought to make things right. She's always the reason." Then he walked out, leaving the press room buzzing behind him. James caught up with him in the hallway. "That was perfect, genuine, strong, vulnerable in the right way. The story will shift now. It's not about revenge anymore.
It's about character. I don't care about the story, Ethan said tiredly. I just want to go home to my daughter. Soon, but first you need to address the company. All employees. They deserve to hear from you directly. Ethan nodded. James was right. He'd asked these people to trust him, to follow him, to believe that Horizon Industries could be different under his leadership. He owed them honesty.
At 11 a.m., Ethan stood in the main atrium of Horizon Industries headquarters. Every employee who could be spared from critical operations had gathered. Hundreds of faces looking up at him, some curious, some skeptical, some openly hopeful. He didn't use a microphone this time, just raised his voice and spoke. Most of you don't know me. Some of you might have passed me in the hallway over the years without realizing who I was. I've been invisible by design, watching this company from a distance, trying to understand what it had become in my absence. And what I found troubled me. People shifted uncomfortably. Ethan pressed on. I found a culture where employees were afraid to make mistakes, where creativity was stifled by fear of retribution, where people were treated as disposable resources rather than valuable human beings. That ends today, not because I'm taking over, but because every single person in this building deserves better.
A young woman in the front row had tears streaming down her face. She raised her hand tentatively.
Yes? I was one of Victoria's assistants. She fired me 6 months ago because I brought her a latte instead of a cappuccino. I haven't been able to find work since because she blacklisted me. Her voice broke. Is there any chance I could come back? Ethan felt something break open in his chest. What's your name? Sarah. Sarah Mitchell. Of course her name was Sarah. Sarah Mitchell, you're rehired, effective immediately. He raised his voice so everyone could hear. And we're establishing a new policy. Any employee who was terminated by Victoria Chen for reasons that were unjust or retaliatory can apply for reinstatement. We'll review each case individually, but if you were fired for being human, for making ordinary mistakes, for not meeting impossible standards, we want you back. The atrium erupted in applause. People were crying openly now.
Someone started chanting, "Read, read, read," and others joined in, until James had to step forward and motion for quiet. Ethan waited for the noise to die down before continuing. I can't promise you that I'll be a perfect CEO. I can't promise that every decision I make will be right. But I can promise you this. I will never treat you as less than human. I will never humiliate you for sport. And I will never forget what it's like to be invisible, to be dismissed, to be treated like you don't matter. Because I've lived it, and I never want anyone else to feel that way again. He descended from the platform and walked through the crowd. People reached out to shake his hand, to thank him, to tell him their own stories of mistreatment under Victoria Chen's leadership. Ethan listened to every one of them, making mental notes, filing away names and grievances that would need to be addressed. By the time he finally made it back to the executive floor, it was past noon. His phone was exploding with messages, news outlets requesting interviews, shareholders wanting meetings, even a few texts from people he'd gone to college with, suddenly remembering they'd been friends. But there was only one message he cared about. From Emma, typed carefully with help from Mrs. Chen. Mrs. Chen showed me you on TV. You looked really important. I'm proud of you, Daddy. Ethan sat down heavily in his new office, in Victoria Chen's old chair, and let himself cry. Not from sadness or relief or exhaustion, though he felt all of those things. He cried because his daughter was proud of him. Because after 5 years of hiding, of pretending, of letting himself be seen as less than he was, his daughter finally knew the truth. And she was proud.
Ethan wiped his eyes quickly when James knocked and entered without waiting for permission. The older man carried 2 sandwiches wrapped in deli paper and 2 bottles of water.
"You haven't eaten since yesterday," James said, setting one sandwich in front of Ethan. "Don't argue, just eat." Ethan unwrapped the sandwich mechanically, turkey and Swiss on wheat, and took a bite without tasting it. James sat across from him, eating his own lunch with the methodical efficiency of someone who'd spent decades in boardrooms. Victoria's lawyers called, 3 times in the last hour. What do they want? Reinstatement, back pay, public apology. The usual demands from someone who doesn't understand they've already lost. Ethan set down his sandwich. "What did you tell them?" "That they should read the termination letter more carefully. Specifically, the part about cause documentation and ironclad legal standing." James took a drink of water. "They threatened a lawsuit, wrongful termination, defamation, emotional distress. Let them sue." "That's what I said. Catherine's already prepared our countersuit. Fraud, theft of intellectual property, breach of fiduciary duty. By the time we're done, Victoria Chen won't be able to get a job managing a lemonade stand." Ethan should have felt satisfaction. Instead, he just felt tired. What about Derek Morrison? His lawyers are smarter. They call to negotiate a non-disclosure agreement. Derek signs an NDA, promising never to speak about Horizon Industries or last night's incident. And in exchange, we agree not to pursue legal action against him personally. No. James raised an eyebrow. No? He handed her the bucket, James. He enabled her cruelty. He stood there and laughed while my daughter screamed. I don't care if he signs 1,000 NDAs. I want him to face consequences. Ethan, from a legal standpoint, I don't care about the legal standpoint. I care about the principle. Derek Morrison made a choice. He chose to participate in humiliation. He chose to be complicit. And he needs to understand that choices have consequences. James studied him for a long moment. "Your father used to say something similar. He'd say that the measure of a man isn't what he does when everyone's watching. It's what he does when he thinks no one will find out." Derek thought no one would find out. He thought I was nobody, just another disposable person he could laugh at. Ethan's voice hardened. And now he knows different. James finished his sandwich and crumpled the wrapper. "All right, no NDA. Let Derek Morrison face the consequences." He paused. "But Ethan, you need to prepare yourself. This is going to get uglier before it gets better. Victoria has money, connections, and a very bruised ego. She's not going away quietly." "Good. Neither am I." The afternoon stretched into evening in a blur of meetings, phone calls, and document reviews. Ethan met with the head of HR to discuss employee grievances. Met with the communications team to plan damage control. Met with legal to review Victoria's contract and employment history. Every meeting revealed another layer of misconduct, another employee story, another reason why his father's test had been necessary. By 6 p.m., Ethan couldn't take another meeting. He told James he was leaving and walked out before anyone could stop him. The drive home through rush hour traffic gave him time to think. His phone rang 3 times. He ignored it. Another text from David Patterson, the investigative reporter, asking for that exclusive interview. Ethan would deal with that tomorrow. Tonight belonged to Emma. When he pulled up to the apartment building, he noticed the news van parked across the street. A reporter and cameraman were standing on the sidewalk, waiting. They spotted him immediately and started moving toward his car. Ethan got out, locked the door, and walked toward the building entrance without acknowledging them. "Mr. Reed, just a few questions." No comment.
Is it true you're worth over $3 billion? Ethan kept walking.
Why did you choose to live in poverty when you could have... He spun around so fast, the reporter actually stumbled backward.
I didn't live in poverty. I lived like millions of Americans live every day, working hard, paying bills, raising a child alone. The fact that you think that's poverty says more about your perspective than mine. He turned back around and entered the building, hearing the cameraman say, "Did you get that?" as the door closed behind him. The elevator ride to the 13th floor felt longer than usual. Ethan's reflection stared back at him from the polished metal doors. He looked exhausted, older. But there was something else there too, something that hadn't been there yesterday. Certainty, purpose. The weight of hiding was gone, replaced by the weight of responsibility. Somehow, that felt lighter. Mrs. Chen opened the apartment door before he could use his key. Her face was a mixture of relief and bewilderment.
Mr. Reed, I don't know what to say.
All day, people calling, reporters downstairs, Emma asking questions. I didn't know how to answer. It's all right, Mrs. Chen. I'm sorry you got caught up in this. No. She shook her head firmly. You were always good to me, always respectful, always paid on time. I don't care about money or companies or any of it. You're a good man. That's what matters. Her words hit him harder than any press conference question could have. Thank you, Ethan managed. That means more than you know. Emma appeared behind Mrs. Chen, still wearing her astronaut pajamas, even though it was evening. She looked at Ethan with wide eyes, uncertain how to bridge the gap between the daddy she knew and the man she'd seen on television. Hi, sweetheart. Hi. Mrs. Chen gathered her things quickly. I'll go now. Give you family time. Mr. Reed, if you need me tomorrow. Same time. And Mrs. Chen? I'm giving you a raise, effective immediately. She started to protest, but Ethan held up his hand.
You've taken care of my daughter for 3 years. You've never asked questions, never judged, never treated me differently because of where I lived or what I wore. That kind of loyalty is rare. It should be rewarded. Mrs. Chen's eyes filled with tears. She nodded once and left quietly. Ethan and Emma stood looking at each other across the small living room. Finally, Emma spoke. Are we rich? Ethan couldn't help but smile. Yes, we're rich. Like, how rich? Rich enough that you never have to worry about anything again. But we were okay before, weren't we? Ethan crossed the room and knelt in front of his daughter, taking her small hands in his. We were okay. We were always okay. But sweetheart, there's something I need to explain to you. Something important. About why I kept secrets. About why I let people treat me badly. About why last night had to happen the way it did. Emma nodded seriously. I'm listening. Ethan led her to the couch, the same worn couch they'd sat on 1,000 times before, and began to tell her the whole story. About her grandfather, William Reed. About Horizon Industries. About the will and the 5-year test. About Victoria Chen and the innovations and the choice to remain invisible. Emma listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from confusion to understanding, to something that looked like pride. So, Grandpa William wanted to know if that lady was good or bad? She asked when he finished. Something like that. He wanted to know if she would be kind to people, even when she didn't have to be. And she wasn't kind. No, she wasn't. Emma was quiet for a moment, processing. Daddy, why did you let her pour water on you? You could have stopped her. I could have. But if I'd stopped her, no one would have seen who she really was.
Sometimes you have to let people show their true colors, even when it hurts.
Did it hurt? Ethan thought about lying, about protecting her from the reality of what he'd felt. Standing in that ballroom, water dripping down his face, his daughter screaming. But Emma deserved honesty. Yes, it hurt a lot. Not because of the water, because of what it meant. That she thought I was someone who didn't matter, someone who could be treated like trash. He squeezed Emma's hand. But you know what hurt more? Knowing you had to see it. I was scared, Emma admitted in a small voice. I thought people were going to keep being mean to you. They're not. Not anymore. Because now everyone knows the truth. What truth? That kindness matters more than power. That how you treat people when you think no one's watching is who you really are. That being rich or successful doesn't give you permission to be cruel. Ethan pulled Emma close. And that your daddy loves you enough to stand in a room and take whatever comes, if it means making the world a little bit better for you. Emma buried her face in his chest. I love you too, Daddy. They sat together until Emma's stomach growled loudly enough to make them both laugh. Ethan ordered pizza, extra cheese, and they ate on the couch while watching a cartoon about space explorers that Emma had seen a dozen times but never got tired of. Around 8 p.m., Ethan's phone rang again. This time, it was Catherine Williams. I'm sorry to bother you at home, she said, but we have a situation. Ethan felt his stomach drop. What kind of situation? Victoria is doing a television interview right now, live, on Channel 7 News. You need to see this. Ethan turned on the TV and flipped to Channel 7. There was Victoria Chen, sitting across from Amanda Reeves, the city's most aggressive investigative journalist. Victoria looked immaculate. Cream-colored suit, perfect makeup. Her expression a carefully crafted mixture of hurt and righteous indignation. Turn it off, Emma, Ethan said. Go brush your teeth. But I want to watch. Now, please. Something in his tone made Emma obey without further argument. She disappeared into the bathroom, and Ethan turned up the volume. Amanda Reeves was in full attack mode. Ms. Chen, the video shows you pouring dirty water on Ethan Reed's head. How do you explain that behavior? I was provoked, Victoria said, her voice trembling slightly. Ethan Reed has been harassing me for months, showing up at company events, making veiled threats. Last night, he approached me aggressively, and I reacted in self-defense. Ethan felt his jaw drop. Self-defense? But witnesses say he simply offered you water, Amanda pressed. Witnesses who work for him? Victoria interrupted smoothly. Of course they're going to take his side. Ethan Reed orchestrated this entire situation to destroy my career and steal credit for work I've done. He's been living a lie for 5 years, pretending to be poor, gathering information, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. This is calculated revenge, nothing more. Are you denying that the innovations credited to you were actually his work? Absolutely. Those innovations came from my team, under my leadership. Ethan Reed may be the owner, but he's been completely uninvolved in the company's operations. He's trying to rewrite history now that he's decided he wants control. Amanda Reeves looked skeptical. The board of directors has released documentation showing that anonymous submissions match the patents you filed. The board is protecting their interests. They don't want a lawsuit. They don't want the truth to come out. That they allowed a disturbed man to manipulate this entire situation. Victoria leaned forward, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I'm a woman in a male-dominated industry. I've worked my entire life to get where I am. And now, a powerful man with unlimited resources
is using one unfortunate incident to destroy everything I've built. This is about gender. This is about power. This is about silencing successful women. Ethan stood up so fast, he knocked over his half-empty water bottle. Catherine was still on the phone. "Are you watching this?" she demanded. Every word. She's trying to flip the narrative, make herself the victim, make you the villain. We need to respond immediately. No. No? No press statements, no responses, no playing her game. Ethan paced the living room, his mind working through strategies. Victoria wants a public fight because she thinks she can win it. She's charismatic, she's polished. She knows how to manipulate media. If we engage, we look defensive. We look like we have something to hide. So what do you suggest? We let her talk. We let her make claims, and then we release the documentation. All of it. Not in a press release. Not in an interview. We post it online. Public access. Let the world see the evidence for themselves. Catherine was quiet for a moment. That's actually brilliant. She can spin stories all she wants, but she can't spin hard data. Exactly. Prepare everything. Every anonymous submission I made. Every email where she took credit. Every employee complaint. Every piece of evidence we have. Put it on the company website under a page called Truth and Transparency. Let people draw their own conclusions. It'll take a few hours to compile and verify everything. Then we work through the night. This needs to be perfect. No mistakes. No gaps she can exploit. I'll call the team. We'll have it ready by morning. Ethan hung up and turned back to the television. Victoria was still talking, tears streaming down her face now, describing how she'd felt threatened and afraid, how Ethan had been stalking her, how she feared for her safety. It was a masterful performance. If Ethan hadn't lived the truth, he might have believed her himself. Emma emerged from the bathroom, toothbrush still in her hand. "Daddy, why is that lady on TV?" "She's telling lies, sweetheart." "Why?" "Because sometimes when people lose, they try to change the story, make themselves the hero instead of the villain." "But everyone saw what happened. The video doesn't lie." Ethan smiled despite everything. "You're right. The video doesn't lie. And neither will we." He got Emma to bed with promises that everything would be okay, then settled in at the kitchen table with his laptop. Catherine sent him secure links to the compiled documentation, and Ethan spent the next 4 hours reviewing every file, every email, every piece of evidence that would be made public. Around midnight, James called. "Victoria's interview has been viewed over 2 million times. Social media is split down the middle. Half the people are calling her out. The other half think you're an abusive billionaire playing mind games. And by morning, everyone will have access to the truth." Ethan, once we release this documentation, there's no going back. Victoria will sue. Media will dig deeper. Your entire life will be examined. Good. Let them examine it. I've got nothing to hide. What about Emma? She's going to face scrutiny too. Kids at school, parents talking, media trying to get interviews. I'll protect her, whatever it takes. Your father dealt with this too, you know. When he first took over from your grandfather, the press wanted blood. They dug into everything. Your mother hated it, almost left him over it. Ethan had forgotten about that. His mother had always been intensely private, uncomfortable with the spotlight that came with the Reed name. She died when Ethan was 16, cancer taking her before she could see what he'd become. My mother stayed, Ethan said quietly. She chose to weather the storm because she believed in what my father was building. And what are you building? Ethan looked toward Emma's bedroom door.
A company that doesn't just make money. A company that makes things right. James was silent for a long moment. Your father would be proud, even if he'd never admit it out loud. They hung up. Ethan reviewed the final documentation one more time, then sent Catherine the approval to publish. At 1:47 a.m., the Horizon Industries website updated with a new page. Truth and transparency. 5 years of evidence, meticulously documented, publicly accessible. Ethan closed his laptop and went to check on Emma. She was sleeping peacefully, one hand tucked under her pillow, the other holding the stuffed astronaut she'd had since she was 3. He stood in her doorway for a long time, just watching her breathe, reminding himself why he'd done all of this. Not for revenge, not for power, not even for his father's legacy. For her. So she could grow up in a world where cruelty had consequences, where character mattered, where the truth eventually won. Ethan was too wired to sleep. He walked back to the living room and turned on the television, volume low. Channel 7 was replaying Victoria's interview. He watched her performance with new eyes, seeing the calculation behind every tear, every trembling word, every carefully constructed lie. His phone started buzzing around 2 a.m., text messages flooding in as people discovered the new website page. James sent a simple message. It's live, buckle up. Catherine sent, media is already responding. This is going to be everywhere by dawn. And then one more text from a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Reed, this is Sarah Mitchell, the assistant who got fired over the latte. I just read everything on the website. I'm crying. Thank you for telling the truth. Thank you for caring. Thank you for bringing me back. I won't let you down. Ethan felt something shift in his chest. This was why it mattered. Not the billions, or the company, or the legacy. The people. The Sarah Mitchells of the world who'd been crushed by Victoria's cruelty and deserved a second chance. He typed back, "You never let anyone down, Sarah. Victoria just couldn't see your value. Welcome home." By 3 a.m., Ethan finally felt exhaustion winning. He lay down on the couch, too tired to walk to his bedroom, and closed his eyes. Sleep came quickly, dreamless and deep. When he woke, sunlight was streaming through the windows, and Emma was shaking his shoulder. "Daddy, you're on TV again, and people are saying different things now." Ethan sat up, his neck stiff from the couch. He reached for the remote and turned on the morning news. Amanda Reeves was back, but this time her expression was grim. Overnight, Horizon Industries released extensive documentation contradicting Victoria Chen's claims. The evidence includes 5 years of anonymous innovation submissions that match patents Ms. Chen claimed as her own work. Email communications showing her taking credit for ideas she didn't create, and dozens of employee complaints about hostile work environment and abusive management practices. The screen cut to Catherine Williams being interviewed outside Horizon headquarters. "The facts speak for themselves," Catherine said firmly. "Ethan Reed has documentation for every claim he's made. Victoria Chen has stories. Stories that don't match the evidence. Stories that don't match witness testimony. Stories that fall apart under scrutiny." Amanda Reeves continued. "We've reached out to Ms. Chen's legal team for comment, but they've declined to respond to the specific documentation released by Horizon Industries. In the meantime, several former employees have come forward with their own stories of mistreatment under Ms. Chen's leadership, corroborating the company's claims." The screen showed a montage of interviews. A young man describing how Victoria had berated him in front of clients for using the wrong font in a presentation. A woman explaining how she'd been fired for taking a sick day when her child had the flu. Another man detailing how Victoria had forced him to work through Christmas, despite promised time off. Ethan watched in silence as his decision to go public rippled outward, giving voice to people who'd been silenced, creating space for truth that had been suppressed.
Emma climbed onto the couch beside him. Is the mean lady going to be in trouble now? Yes, she's going to be in a lot of trouble. Good. Ethan's phone rang. David Patterson, the investigative reporter. Mr. Reed, I assume you've seen the morning news. I have. I still want that exclusive interview.
But now I want to expand it. I want to do a deep dive into corporate culture, accountability. What happens when power goes unchecked? Your story is the hook, but there's a bigger conversation here about how we treat people in the workplace, how we define success, how we measure leadership. Ethan thought about it for a moment. On one condition. Name it. You interview employees, not just executives, not just people at the top. The people who worked under Victoria, the people who were fired unjustly, the people who are being brought back. I want their stories told. I want the world to hear from the people she hurt. Patterson was quiet for a beat. That's a better story than anything I could have written myself. You've got a deal. Good. Set it up through James Hartwell. He'll coordinate everything. After he hung up, Ethan looked at Emma. What do you want for breakfast? Can we go out? Like, to a real restaurant? Ethan realized she was right. They'd eaten every meal in this apartment for years, saving money, staying invisible, living small. That life was over now. Yes, we can go wherever you want.
Really? Anywhere?
Anywhere. Emma's face lit up. The pancake place, with the chocolate chips. Ethan laughed, the sound surprising him with its genuineness. The pancake place it is. They got dressed, Ethan in jeans and a casual shirt, Emma in her favorite dress with the stars on it. When they stepped outside, the news van was gone, replaced by a different kind of attention. Neighbors who'd ignored him for years now nodded respectfully. The doorman, who'd always been curt, now rushed to open the door. "Good morning, Mr. Reed. Beautiful day." It was the same doorman, the same building, but everything had changed, because they knew who he was now. At the pancake place, the hostess recognized him immediately. "Mr. Reed, we're honored to have you. Right this way." They were seated at the best table, given menus, offered complimentary orange juice. Emma looked around with wide eyes. "Is it always going to be like this now?" "Probably." "Does it feel weird?" "A little, but also kind of nice." She grinned. "I like the free orange juice." They ordered pancakes, both of them getting chocolate chips, and sat together in the busy restaurant, watching the morning unfold. Ethan's phone buzzed constantly, but he ignored it. This moment belonged to Emma. When their food came, Emma took a big bite, then looked at her father seriously. "Daddy, are you going to stay at the big company, or are you coming back home?" Ethan understood what she was really asking. Would their life change completely? Would he disappear into the corporate world and leave her behind? "I'm staying at the company," he said carefully. "But I'm also staying with you. We might move to a bigger place. You might go to a different school. Things are going to change. But you and me, sweetheart, that never changes. You're always first. Always." Emma nodded, satisfied. They finished breakfast and walked back to the apartment through streets that felt different now, lighter somehow, as if the weight Ethan had carried for 5 years was finally lifting. When they got home, there was an envelope taped to the apartment door. No postage, no return address, just Ethan's name written in precise, angry handwriting. He knew that handwriting. Emma went inside while Ethan opened the envelope. Inside was a single page, handwritten. The letters pressed so hard into the paper they'd almost torn through. "You think you've won. You think exposing me makes you righteous. But you're just a spoiled rich boy playing games with people's lives. You set me up. You manipulated me.
You used your daughter as a prop in your sick revenge fantasy. The world will see through you eventually. They always do. Enjoy your victory while it lasts. It won't. It wasn't signed,
But it didn't need to be. Ethan read the letter twice, feeling Victoria's rage radiating off the page. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his pocket. Evidence, in case she tried anything else. Inside, Emma was already changing back into her astronaut pajamas, settling in for a morning of cartoons and normalcy. Ethan watched her for a moment, thinking about Victoria's words. Playing games with people's lives. Using Emma as a prop. Maybe Victoria was right. Maybe he had manipulated the situation. Maybe he had used his daughter's presence at the gala to make the moment more dramatic, more damning, more impossible to dismiss. But manipulation required lies, and Ethan had told nothing but the truth. He'd given Victoria Chen 5 years to show who she was. She'd shown him. That wasn't manipulation. That was observation. And if his daughter had witnessed it, if the world had witnessed it, that wasn't exploitation. That was accountability.
Ethan pulled out his phone and texted James. Victoria left a threatening note at my apartment. Photograph it and add it to the legal file, just in case. James responded immediately. Already anticipated she'd try something. Security is being assigned to you and Emma. They'll be discreet, but they'll be there. Ethan hadn't thought about security, hadn't considered that Victoria might escalate from words to actions. But James was right. A woman who'd pour dirty water on someone in public might be capable of worse in private. He walked into the living room and sat beside Emma on the couch. "Sweetheart, some people are going to be around us for a while. Security people. Their job is to make sure we're safe." Emma looked up from her cartoon. "Safe from what?" "Just safe. It's normal for people in our position." She studied his face. "You're worried about the mean lady." Ethan should have known better than to try to hide things from an 8-year-old who'd already proven herself far too perceptive. "A little," he admitted. "But mostly, I just want to make sure nothing else bad happens." "Okay." She turned back to her cartoon, apparently satisfied. Ethan sat with her, half watching the show, half thinking about everything that needed to happen next. The company needed restructuring. Employees needed reassurance. Policies needed changing. Culture needed healing. And somewhere out there, Victoria Chen was planning her next move. But for right now, in this moment, Ethan was just a father sitting on a couch with his daughter, watching cartoons about space explorers, eating the last of the chocolate chip pancakes they'd brought home in a takeout box. It was enough. It had to be enough. Because the hardest part was still coming. The hardest part came 3 weeks later. Ethan had spent those weeks rebuilding Horizon Industries from the inside out. New policies on workplace conduct, mandatory training on respect and dignity, an anonymous reporting system for employees who witnessed misconduct. Sarah Mitchell was back, working directly with Ethan to identify other wrongfully terminated employees and create a pathway for their return. 23 people had been brought back so far. 23 careers resurrected. 23 families given second chances. The stock price had taken an initial hit when the scandal broke, but it recovered within days as investors saw Ethan's vision for a company built on innovation and integrity, not just quarterly earnings. The renewable energy patent, his design, was generating unprecedented interest from governments worldwide. 3 countries had already signed licensing agreements. 5 more were in negotiations. Emma had transferred to a private school with better resources and smaller class sizes. She'd been nervous the first day, worried that kids would treat her differently because of who her father was. But she'd come home smiling, talking about a girl named Sophie who liked astronomy and wanted to be Emma's friend.
Ethan had never been more relieved. They'd moved too, not to his father's old estate, which felt too big and too full of ghosts, but to a comfortable house in a quiet neighborhood, with a yard where Emma could play, and neighbors who nodded politely but didn't pry. Mrs. Chen came every weekday, same hours, same warmth, just a significantly better paycheck. Life was settling into a new rhythm, a better rhythm. Ethan should have felt satisfied. Instead, he felt the weight of unfinished business pressing against his chest every morning when he woke up. Victoria Chen had disappeared. After her television interview and the subsequent release of documentation that contradicted every claim she'd made, she'd gone silent. No more lawyers calling.
No more threatening notes. No press appearances. She'd simply vanished from public view. James kept telling Ethan to let it go. She's finished, blacklisted, unemployable. She'll spend the rest of her career trying to rehabilitate a reputation that's permanently destroyed. You won. Move on. But Ethan couldn't move on. Not completely. Because Victoria Chen wasn't the only one who'd participated in that night. She was just the most visible. The shareholders who'd laughed. The parents who'd stood by and watched. The school board members who'd done nothing to stop it. Derek Morrison, who'd handed her the bucket with a smile. They'd all been complicit. They'd all chosen cruelty over courage. And most of them were still living their lives as if nothing had changed. David Patterson's investigative piece had helped. It was a powerful exploration of corporate culture and accountability that named names and detailed patterns of abuse under Victoria's leadership.
The piece had won an award and sparked national conversation about workplace ethics. But conversation wasn't consequence. Ethan was thinking about this on a Tuesday morning when James walked into his office with an expression Ethan had learned to dread. The look that meant trouble. Victoria's filed the lawsuit. Ethan set down his coffee. When? This morning. Wrongful termination, defamation, emotional distress, and... James hesitated. Gender discrimination. Gender discrimination? She's claiming you targeted her because she's a woman. That you would never have subjected a male CEO to this kind of scrutiny or public humiliation. That the entire 5-year test was designed to fail a female leader. That's insane. My father chose Victoria because he thought she had potential. Her gender had nothing to do with it. Her lawyers don't care about truth. They care about narrative. And the narrative they're building is powerful. Successful woman, destroyed by privileged man with unlimited resources. It plays well in certain circles. Ethan stood and walked to the window. What does Catherine say? That we countersue for double the amount. That we bury her in discovery requests. That we make this so expensive and time-consuming that she'll beg to settle. No. James raised an eyebrow. No? I don't want to bury her. I want to face her. In court, in front of a judge and jury. Let them hear the evidence. Let them watch the video. Let them decide who's telling the truth. Ethan, trials are unpredictable. Juries are emotional. Victoria is a very good actress. She could win. Then she wins, but at least we'll have given truth a fair shot. James was quiet for a long moment. Your father would have done the same thing. He hated settlement agreements. Said they let guilty people buy their way out of consequences. Then we don't settle. We fight. The trial was scheduled for 6 months later. 6 months of depositions and document reviews and legal maneuvering. 6 months of Victoria's lawyers trying every trick to suppress evidence or exclude witnesses. 6 months of Ethan watching Emma grow and change, while the shadow of the lawsuit hung over everything. They celebrated Emma's 9th birthday with a party at the new house. Her new friends from school running through the yard, laughing and playing like children should. Ethan watched from the porch, thinking about how different this was from last year's birthday. Last year, it had been just him and Emma,
and a cake from the grocery store. This year, there was a bounce house and a magician, and more presents than one child could possibly need. "You look troubled," Catherine said, appearing beside him with a glass of wine. "This is supposed to be a happy day." "It is happy. I'm just thinking about the trial." 3 months away. Try not to think about it today.
What if we lose, Catherine? What if the jury believes her? Catherine took a sip of wine, considering. Then we appeal, and if we lose the appeal, we pay the judgment and move forward. But Ethan, even if we lose in court, we've already won what matters. Victoria can't get her reputation back. She can't undo the documentation we released. She can't erase the employee testimonies. At worst, she gets some money, but she'll never get her life back. Is that enough? It has to be, because the alternative is spending the rest of your life fighting battles that are already won. Ethan knew she was right, but knowing and feeling were different things. The trial began on a cold Monday in October. Ethan arrived at the courthouse with James and Catherine, walking through a gauntlet of cameras and reporters. Victoria was already inside with her legal team, a squadron of expensive lawyers in expensive suits who looked like they'd never lost a case in their lives. The jury selection took 2 days. Ethan watched as both sides carefully chose 12 people who would decide the outcome. 6 men, 6 women, various ages and backgrounds, people who would be asked to watch a video of a woman pouring dirty water on a man's head and determine whether that woman deserved $200 million in compensation for losing her job because of it. When testimony began, Victoria's lawyers went first. They painted a picture of a talented executive who'd built Horizon Industries into a powerhouse, only to be undermined by a jealous owner who'd orchestrated her downfall. They showed her awards and accolades. They brought in business associates who praised her vision. They presented emails that, taken out of context, made her look like a victim of corporate politics. Ethan sat through it all, stone-faced, listening to his life be rewritten as a revenge fantasy. Then came the defense. Catherine led the questioning, methodical and precise. She presented the anonymous innovation submissions side by side with Victoria's patent filings. She showed email chains where Victoria took credit for work that wasn't hers. She called witness after witness, former employees who described a culture of fear and humiliation. Sarah Mitchell testified on day 4. She sat in the witness box wearing a simple blue dress, her hands folded in her lap, and described being fired for bringing the wrong coffee drink. "I was 3 minutes late with her morning latte because there was a line at the coffee shop," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the tears running down her face. "Miss Chen called me incompetent. She said I was useless. She fired me in front of 10 other people and told me I'd never work in this industry again." Victoria's lawyer stood for cross-examination. "Isn't it true, Ms. Mitchell, that you were frequently late and had received multiple warnings about your performance?" "I was late once. The morning I was fired."
I'd never received a single warning about my performance. But you admit you failed to complete a simple task, getting coffee on time. I was 3 minutes late because I was trying to get her order exactly right. She wanted a very specific kind of latte with specific instructions, and I didn't want to make a mistake, because I'd seen what happened to people who made mistakes. "So you're saying Ms. Chen had high standards?" Sarah's voice hardened. "I'm saying Ms. Chen enjoyed humiliating people. There's a difference between high standards and cruelty." The lawyer tried to shake her testimony, but Sarah held firm. When she stepped down, Ethan saw several jury members looking at Victoria with something new in their eyes. Doubt. Maybe even disgust. Day 7 was when they showed the video. The entire video. Unedited. From the moment Ethan offered water to the moment he walked out carrying his sobbing daughter. The courtroom was silent,
except for the audio of Victoria's voice cutting through the ballroom. "You think you belong in a room with people who've actually accomplished something?" The splash. The gasp from the crowd. Emma's scream. When it ended, 2 jurors were crying. 3 others looked openly angry. Victoria stared straight ahead, her expression blank. But Ethan saw her hands trembling in her lap. Ethan testified on day 8. He sat in the witness box and told the truth. All of it. From his father's will to the 5-year test to the decision to attend the gala. Victoria's lawyers tried to break him down, tried to make him admit he'd engineered the whole situation, tried to paint him as a puppet master pulling strings. But Ethan didn't break. He simply repeated the facts, over and over, calmly, clearly, until the lawyers had nothing left to ask. "Did you want Victoria Chen to pour water on you?" her lawyer finally asked, a last desperate attempt at entrapment. "No. I wanted her to offer me basic human dignity. She chose otherwise. But you knew she might react negatively when you approached her." "I knew she might reveal her character, yes." "So you used that moment. You used your daughter's presence. You manufactured evidence for this exact situation." Ethan leaned forward slightly. "I offered water at a charity gala. Victoria Chen chose to humiliate me. Those are the facts. Everything else is your interpretation, not my intent." The lawyer sat down, clearly frustrated. Catherine stood for redirect. "Mr. Reed, in the 5 years you observed Victoria Chen's leadership, did you ever see her show kindness to someone she perceived as having less power than her?" Ethan thought about it carefully. "No, I never did." "Did you ever see her take responsibility for a mistake?" "No." "Did you ever see her treat service workers, custodial staff, or subordinates with respect?" "No, not once." "And on the night of the gala, when you offered her water, did you say or do anything threatening, aggressive, or inappropriate?" "No, I said water and held out a tray. That was all." Catherine nodded and sat down. Ethan stepped down from the witness stand, feeling drained but also oddly peaceful. He'd told the truth. Whatever happened next was out of his hands. Closing arguments came on day 9. Victoria's lawyers gave an impassioned speech about power dynamics and gender discrimination and the importance of protecting successful women from vengeful men. Catherine gave a quieter closing, simply walking through the evidence point by point, ending with the video. "You've seen what happened," she told the jury. "You've heard the testimony. You've reviewed the documentation. The question you need to answer is simple. Does pouring dirty water on someone's head in front of their child constitute grounds for termination? Or does Victoria Chen deserve $200 million for facing consequences for her actions? The choice is yours." The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Ethan waited in a private room with James and Catherine, unable to eat, unable to think about anything except those 12 people deciding his fate. When the bailiff came to tell them the jury had reached a verdict, Ethan felt his heart hammering against his ribs. They filed back into the courtroom. Victoria sat at her table, perfectly composed, not looking at anyone. Ethan took his seat and waited. The jury foreman stood. "We find in favor of the defendant, Ethan Reed, on all counts." The courtroom erupted. Victoria's face crumbled. Her lawyers immediately started talking about appeals. James squeezed Ethan's shoulder. Catherine smiled. But Ethan felt something unexpected. Not triumph, not satisfaction, just a deep, bone-tired relief that it was finally over. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Ethan made a brief statement. "I'm grateful for the jury's decision. I'm grateful for the legal system. But mostly, I'm grateful that truth still matters, that evidence still matters, that we can still hold powerful people accountable for how they treat others."
This was never about revenge. It was about making sure that someone who hurt people faced real consequences. Today, that happened. A reporter shouted, "What do you say to Victoria Chen now?" Ethan paused, considering. I hope she learns from this. I hope she understands that success without character is worthless. And I hope she becomes the person my father believed she could be when he gave her that chance 5 years ago. He walked away from the cameras, got into the car where Emma waited with Mrs. Chen, and let himself finally breathe. "Did you win, Daddy?" "Yes, sweetheart. We won."
"Good." Emma hugged him tight. "Can we get ice cream now?"
Ethan laughed, the sound surprising him with its genuineness. "Yes, we can absolutely get ice cream." 3 months later, Ethan was working late at the office when security called to say someone was in the lobby asking to see him. No appointment. They'd refused to give a name, but they insisted it was important. Ethan almost said no. It was nearly 8 p.m. Emma was home with Mrs. Chen, probably already in bed. He was tired and wanted nothing more than to go home. But something made him say yes. The security guard escorted the visitor to Ethan's office. When the door opened, Victoria Chen walked in. She looked different, smaller somehow. Her hair was pulled back simply. She wore jeans and a plain sweater. No makeup, no armor. Just a woman who looked like she'd been through a war and lost. "Thank you for seeing me," she said quietly. "Why are you here?" "To apologize." She said it simply, without preamble. "I've spent 3 months thinking about what I did, what I became. And I need you to know that I'm sorry. For the water. For taking credit for your work. For every cruel thing I said and did. I'm sorry." Ethan studied her face, looking for the calculation, the manipulation, the performance. He found only exhaustion, and something that might have been genuine remorse. "What do you want from me, Victoria?" "Nothing. I don't want anything. I just needed to say it. Needed you to hear it. Because you were right about everything. I did become someone cruel. Someone who treated people as disposable. Someone who used power as a weapon instead of a responsibility." She took a shaky breath. "My lawyers told me not to come here. Told me it could be used against me in the appeals process. But I don't care anymore. I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of lying to myself about who I was." "What are you doing now?" "Working at a nonprofit. Administrative work. Filing, organizing, answering phones. It's humbling." She smiled bitterly. "Turns out, I'm not very good at it. I keep expecting people to jump when I ask for something, and instead they just look at me like I'm being unreasonable, which I usually am." Ethan didn't know what to say. He'd imagined this moment 100 times. Imagined telling Victoria exactly what he thought of her. Imagined watching her suffer the way he'd suffered. But now that she was here, actually sorry, he felt only a hollow sadness for the waste of it all. "Why did you do it?" he asked quietly. "Why did you become that person?" Victoria was silent for a long moment. "Because I was afraid. Afraid that if I wasn't perfect, wasn't fierce, wasn't always winning, someone would realize I didn't deserve to be there. So I made myself bigger by making everyone else smaller. And it worked. For a while." She looked at him with eyes that had lost their sharpness. Until it didn't. "Do you understand what you took from those people? From Sarah Mitchell and all the others?" "I'm starting to. Every day I understand a little more." She turned toward the door, then stopped. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I just needed you to know that I see it now. What I was. What I did. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be different." She left without waiting for a response. Ethan sat alone in his office for a long time after she was gone, thinking about redemption and consequences, and whether people could really change. He didn't have answers, but he thought maybe Victoria Chen was asking the right questions now. And maybe that was enough. When Ethan got home, Emma was still awake, reading in bed with a flashlight under her covers. "You're supposed to be asleep," he said, sitting on the edge of her bed. "I wanted to wait for you." She put down her book. "Did something happen? You look different."
Victoria Chen came to see me tonight. Emma's eyes widened. "The mean lady?" "She's not the mean lady anymore. I think maybe she's just a person who did mean things and is trying to figure out how to be better." "Are you still mad at her?" Ethan thought about it. "No, I don't think I am." "Good," Emma nodded firmly. "Being mad is exhausting." He laughed and kissed her forehead. "When did you get so wise?" "I'm 9 now. That's very old." "It is very old." Ethan turned off her flashlight, tucked her in properly, and went to his own room. He stood at the window, looking out at the city lights, thinking about everything that had happened since that night at the gala, thinking about his father's test and whether it had achieved what William Reed had hoped. His father had wanted to know if power revealed character or corrupted it. The answer, Ethan now understood, was both. Power had revealed Victoria Chen's worst instincts, but it had also given Ethan the opportunity to show his best. The test hadn't been about punishing Victoria. It had been about creating a moment where truth became unavoidable, where character was stripped of its disguises, where people had to face who they really were. Ethan had faced who he was, too. Not just the owner of a company, not just a father, but someone who believed that how you treat people when you don't have to be kind is the truest measure of who you are. He picked up his phone and called James. "It's late," James answered. "This better be important." "I want to establish a foundation for employees who've been wrongfully terminated. Legal support, financial assistance, job placement. I want to make sure what happened to Sarah Mitchell never happens to anyone else if we can help it." James was quiet for a moment. "Your father would have liked that. He always said the true measure of success was how many people you lifted up, not how high you climbed yourself." "Then let's get started. First thing tomorrow." Ethan hung up and looked at Rachel's photograph on his nightstand. "I hope I'm making you proud," he whispered. "Both of you." The photograph didn't answer. It never did. But somehow, standing in his bedroom in a house that finally felt like home, with his daughter sleeping peacefully down the hall, and a future that looked nothing like the past 5 years, Ethan thought maybe his wife and father were both smiling. He'd taken a hit. He'd stood in a ballroom and let someone pour dirty water on his head. He'd let his daughter see him humiliated. He'd exposed himself to judgment and scrutiny and public opinion. But he'd also proven something important: that dignity isn't about never falling. It's about how you stand back up. That power is only meaningful when paired with integrity. That the way you treat people when you think nobody important is watching reveals everything about who you really are. Victoria Chen had failed that test spectacularly. But in failing, she'd given Ethan the chance to pass it, to show Emma and everyone watching that cruelty has consequences, that truth matters, that character counts, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stand still and let the world see exactly who everyone is when they think they can get away with anything. The dirty water had washed away everything fake, everything comfortable, everything easy. What remained was the truth, stark and clear and undeniable. And the truth, Ethan had learned, was always worth fighting for, even when it hurt, even when it cost everything. even when it meant standing in a ballroom soaking wet, while the world watched and wondered what kind of man would let himself be destroyed like that. The answer was simple. The kind of man who knew that sometimes you have to break before you can build something better. The kind of man who understood that real strength isn't about fighting back. It's about standing firm. The kind of man who would walk through fire for his daughter and come out the other side holding her hand. Ethan Reed turned off the light, lay down in his bed, and closed his eyes. Tomorrow, there would be more meetings, more decisions, more challenges. But tonight, he was just a father who'd kept his promise. Everything was going to be okay. And for the first time in 5 years, he believed it.